What's up you guys, Nathan Larsen here with another video for those of you guys who make music at home. Whether you're a producer, a songwriter, composer, an artist, if you write and record your own music, this is the channel for you. And hey, if that sounds anything like you should just click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notification, just like right now, because this channel's for you. And I'm coming at you with this video with another Logic Pro X tutorial. And what I'm gonna be showing you are 17 things that I wish I would have known when I first started using Logic. Don't ask me why 17, it's just what came out. But at the end of the day, I use every single one of these things on a very regular basis. So without wasting any more time, let's jump into the DAW. And hey, if in the meantime you like the video, make sure you click the like video. It helps me out a ton and it's totally free. All right, so we are in Logic. Let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Tip number one, or the very first thing I wish I would have known, and this is in no particular order, just so you guys know, was controlling the automation on MIDI instruments. So if you click into the piano roll here, just double click on audio, or not on audio, on MIDI, or click E, it's gonna open up your piano roll. If you now hit A, or also just go up here and hit this, it will actually open up the automation control for MIDI. Now, automatically it's gonna show up as note velocity, but typically what I'm gonna use this for is sustain, pitch bend, and modulation. Again, not really in that order. Modulation and sustain the most, because modulation I'm gonna use on strings for adjusting the expression of strings or the volume of strings. So like if you're using East, West, or native instrument strings, you're gonna be able to use modulation to control that. So I'll typically, do the modulation when I record it in, but then I'm gonna need to go in and actually edit the modulation. I can just do it right within here. In sustain is the same thing. If I'm recording piano, a lot of times I want to adjust the sustain pedal to make things work a little better so it's not as muddy, things like that. So that is the very first one, very simple, very straightforward, but it's controlling automation within the MIDI regions. So number two and number three are actually related. Number two is to use track alternatives. So to turn on track alternatives, you're gonna do right click or control click on a track header. And you're gonna go to track header components and turn on at the very bottom, track alternatives. Now you're gonna see these little arrows right here. If you click on them, you're gonna be able to see that you can now create a new track alternative. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth do you need to do this? How is this useful? Well, the reason this is so useful in particular is if you're creating comps, editing, and doing whatnot for vocals. This is typically why I'm gonna use this, is for vocals. So right here, I have just an example of a harmony. This is not actually what we're gonna use. We haven't done vocals for this specific track yet, but I have two takes that I did. This was just so I could demonstrate to my client what I was thinking as far as what we could do for the harmony. Now, I've got these two takes that I did. So let's go ahead and say that I want to go ahead and do this for my comp. Now I have my two takes for comps. Now by doing that, what most people might do is they might either go in here and flatten, which we're gonna talk about in a second, or they're gonna export to a new track, which is what I used to do. And the problem with that is by exporting it to a new track is you now have two tracks, and like one of them you're never gonna use that, right? So instead what you can do is go and create a duplicate and then rename this to be comp. So now this is it's the same, but we can go back to the different track alternatives, okay? And this is gonna make it so much easier to keep track, so we can always go back. So we can keep our take folder all the way to having our final vocal that's been corrected, timing corrected, pitch corrected, all that stuff, and we can always go back if we need to. So that leads me to number three. I told you number two and number three are connected, and that is to flatten your takes. Now, you wouldn't necessarily want to flatten this if you're not doing the track alternatives, because this actually deletes. So by doing that, it will delete everything else, and it will create this. Now you want to just do flatten, you don't want to do flatten and merge. But now by doing this, we can go ahead and, we could add, this was really lazy, but you could add, your crossfade if you want to do that, which in this case, I might actually just create actual fades. You can do your whatever you want. And then now we can join those and start doing all the rest of the editing that we want by flattening. And then if we ever need to go back, boom, there's our take folder. So those are two kind of separate things, but they're related. The first one, create a track alternative. The second one is to flatten, so then you can actually go ahead and do all of your editing and manipulation there rather than doing all that in your take folder. You don't want to be doing it in your take folder. Okay, so the fourth thing that I wish I would have known is how powerful Logic is for editing features and editing capabilities. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you click Command, go to advanced and have show advanced tools. You want to have audio and all this stuff, advanced editing in particular. You want to have advanced editing selected. You want to go up here, have drag set to crossfade, X-fade, snap to smart is probably what you're going to want to have it, and then set your second tool to scissor. Now, what this means, and if I go back to my comp here, I am now going to be able to do all of my editing. And you already saw I created a crossfade in here by doing that. That's because I just overlapped it, and it's going to automatically create a crossfade. But now with the editing that I want to do, let's say this part right here is out of time, it's a little late or something. I can basically, go way in there. I can, cut here. It looks like that's kind of maybe the beginning of where I'd want to do the edit. And then I can move that around, adjust that, and all that stuff, and actually do all of my editing right within Logic using the scissor tool, the pointer tool. And then the other thing is that you want to go, again, Command comma to open your preferences, go to General, go to Editing, have Fade Tool Click Zones enabled. This will make it so that if you hover over the top corner there, it'll create a fade. Boom. So you don't actually have to use the fade tool. You can just literally have it built in like that. Super, super handy. Those three things alone will speed up your time so much. And then again, having the drag to crossfade, I think automatically might be set to no overlap, which is kind of weird, but crossfade, that's what you want. And if you guys don't know how to edit, I have a whole course on it. Link down below. It's pretty cheap. If you want it, cool. If not, whatever. I don't really care. Number 5 is Option Click Drag. This is a super, super handy feature. So let's say you have something that you want to copy over. You can click on anything and do Option Click Drag like such, and it will literally just create a copy of it, and then you can just go berserk with it. I mean, you can create like a ridiculous, you could grab anything and everything, just like all that stuff, just be like Option Click Drag, and you can move it wherever you want, do whatever you want. It's kind of cool. You can do the same thing with plugins. You can actually, so like let's say I want to take this compressor and move it over, you could just do that, and it just creates a copy of it and moves it over. Super, super handy. Number 6 is to bounce tracks in place. So right here, I've got these strings, right? Let's listen to it. Sounds pretty cool. So this is a track for a client. And so I've got these live strings in here that I did, but then I've also got MIDI strings. I use these to kind of just add a little bit of richness and fullness. So these are native instrument strings. Now, what I want to do here to just take off some of the strain on my computer is to do what's called committing, which is to bounce down MIDI to audio. You're going to do Control Command B, and I'm going to call these there we go. So native instruments, lead strings. I'm going to go to replace track. You want to have a volume and pan automation included, and you want to have normalize off. And then when you click OK, it's going to then create an audio track. Check it. Okay, there we go. All done. Now, if for some reason you want to keep the MIDI, just in case you ever want to go back, you don't have to do replace track. You can make it create a new track. It'll just disable that MIDI, but you can always go back and still kind of change things. I didn't do that because I already know that I'm done. I'm not changing anything at this point. This whole thing's done at this point. This is going to save space or save computer processing power. It's going to make it much, much easier to work with, and it's good to commit to things, to make a decision, say yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to turn into audio so I can't go back. The next one, number 7, is to adjust metronome settings. If you go up here, you've got a little drop-down arrow. Go to metronome settings. There are 3 things that I want to tell you about: tone, volume, and division. Just listen to this right now. So we've got the tone. If I turn that down, listen to how much of a difference that makes. I can turn the volume up. Cool. So that is super helpful. So say, for example, you got a singer in your studio and they're having a hard time hearing the metronome. You can turn the tone up, and that will make it kind of pop out a little bit more. Or say that you're having a really hard time with like a slower tempo song and feeling the beat because it's slow. You can turn division on, and here's what that would sound like. And you can actually change the pitch and change the velocity. So if we want the pitch to be lower, or whatever. You can do velocity, you can adjust that. Anyway, something to mess around with, but this is actually really helpful. This might seem like, well, that's a weird tip. This is actually super helpful. Just really practical stuff that you should know about. All right, number 8. This one's also a really quick and easy one, but super helpful. I use this all the time, and I wish I would have known about it years and years and years ago, like back when I first got started. That is, if you do Option click on anything, it will just reset it. So for example, I have volume here set to minus 8.6. If I do Option and click on that fader, it will just reset it. Now, if you do undo, it will not undo that, just FYI, which is kind of annoying. Well, let's say we got this pan all the way. I can just Option click and it will just reset it. This works for absolutely everything. You could literally have like EQ set to there. If you do Option click, it's just gonna reset it. Option click, reset, Option click, reset, Option click, reset. This works on literally everything. Might seem weird to you. I'm just telling you guys, this is something that you'll use a lot. Just trust me. Use it. All right, number 9 is making your output a bus. This is something I think a lot of people who are newer and maybe even having been producing for a while that are not doing, and you should be doing it. And that is sending multiple tracks to the same bus. Naturally, when you create a new track, it's going to go straight. Here's your output. It's going to stereo output, which means it goes straight from this track to the main output. Instead, what you want to do, let's say we've got all these vocals here. My client hasn't finished the vocals yet, so that's why that's why I'm not playing any of this here. These are all just like scratches and stuff like that. But let's say that these are all done vocals that we've got. What I would want to do is actually send all these to a vocal bus. And I'm actually going to send them there on the output. Now, what I can do is go down to bus and then create a bus. So like bus 9, click X to open up my window here. And then I can name that vocal bus. And then now that'll show up right here. And now what we can do is add effects and processing on this bus, and anything that has that output, bus 9, is going to be run through that processing. Now, why is this handy? This is handy because what I could do is I already have all these things on here. This is just a preset that I created for like whenever I pull vocals in. I almost always change it, but I could take all of this and just load it up on this bus right here, and then take all the effects off of all of these individual vocal tracks here, and they will all be processed the same. Now, this doesn't work that way necessarily to that extreme because you might not want your harmonies going through the same bus. So you might actually have 2 separate buses. But again, you can set the output there. So let's say you got 4 different harmony tracks. You can send all 4 of those to, say, a harmony bus. And you have all your lead vocals that you send to a lead vocal bus. You can process those. You now only have 2 channel strips that are being processed, but you have multiple tracks running through it. If that's confusing, I'm sorry. That's the best way that I can explain it in a very short period of time. I might have to just make a whole video on that. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that. All right, number 10 is to use Latch Mode for automation. One of the most common things you could do this for is for filters. So let's just go ahead and do it. I'm gonna go ahead and set this to this filter here. And when you set to Latch Mode, whatever I do with this, it will basically record. Cool, so watch this. I'm gonna solo this out. Okay, so I did that. I got Latch. I'm gonna turn it back to read. Now if I click A for automation, go down here, it will now show me what I just did. Let's go ahead and zoom in. Now I'd wanna do that like this. Ooh, what are you doing? Now listen. Cool. And then now it'll just do it. So Latch Mode just makes it so that basically whatever you do, it will basically record it. You can set these parameters to your MIDI controller to control. You can do just about anything with it. It's super handy. Latch Mode, I know I talked about that in another one of my videos, but it's handy enough that though for those of you that haven't seen those videos, super, super useful. Okay, number 11 is to use the region editor window. I'm gonna show you what the main reason is I use this for. And that is for reversing things. So I've got this percussion down here. This is audio. Go to the inspector window over here, drop down to region. Now what you're probably gonna see is just this. But if you open up more, you're gonna see reverse. I'm gonna unreverse this and I'm gonna show you what this sounds like just normally. Oh, come on now. Here's what it sounds like. Okay, so it's basically just a percussion hit. Now what I can do instead is go in here and reverse that, and it's gonna do this. Super cool. Now I'm gonna add that fade, and then I don't want the All right, so I want to change the shape of that. Okay, and then that'll be like this. Cool. This is really good for transitions, like this. Cool. The other thing that you can use that for is doing all sorts of pitch stuff. So one of the examples that I have, I don't have it in this track, but I've done this before. Let's say I record like an electric guitar part, and I'm like, ooh, it'd be really cool to have like the octave down or the octave up. Rather than tracking it that way, you could certainly do that, and that'll work. But in some cases, maybe the effect you want is a little different. Let's just go ahead and act like this piano is an example. I'm going to just create a duplicate of that piano, create it downward here. Now what I can do is go in here and go to Transpose. Now if you try clicking on it, there you go. So Transpose, we're gonna go down 12. That's an octave. So it's gonna have to analyze it. It's probably gonna sound really strange on piano, but here's the original piano. Okay, you can see this one already has on the region. And listen to this. That actually works pretty darn well. But what if we did it up 12? So up an octave. Let's try that. Now you can hear some weird artifacts because by boosting it up, it actually shortens the wavelength. And so it kind of has to stretch it out a little bit, which can sound really weird, but we could turn that way down. That effect actually can work really well. This works especially well with guitars. You can either bump them up an octave or down an octave, especially if you do two instances and then pan them hard right, hard left. There's just, that's an idea for you. But anyway, just using this whole thing, you can actually do more stuff in there. There's more that you can do than just that. You can kind of check out all the different features in there. But the main thing I use is reverse and then the pitch stuff. So there's that. Okay, number 12 is, this is kind of might seem a little bit out of left field, but this is for those of you guys that are interested in ever scoring to picture. This is something I used to do a lot more. I haven't really done one recently, but I've done I think maybe 10 different short films. And doing it in Logic is actually really annoying because of some of the ideas of if you go ahead and start working on it, if you change any of the tempo later on, it really screws things up. So what am I talking about? What I'm talking about is, let's say that this right here is a movie. And if you were to pull in a movie, it would show up on the top here. But let's say that you want to start composing in the middle of it because hey, I think I could really start spanking this part out here real quick and get a good feel for what I want to do, and then I'll go back to the beginning. If you start composing right here, the moment you go back to the beginning, I can tell you almost every time you're going to want to change the tempo, change the time signature, or key signatures, not time signatures. You're going to start changing things. Well, as you change those things, it will literally change everything you did over here, and it's going to screw the whole thing up. So how do you fix that? Well, you go into here, click on whatever it is that you're doing, and go down to SMPTE lock that sucker. That thing will not move. It'll stay fixed to that timestamp, not to the grid. Does that make sense? And that, my friends, will save you literally hours. You're welcome. Number 13 is to create and save custom presets. So let's go ahead and say that I want to create my own little preset here for piano, how I want to process piano. I could be here, I want to do this and do that, and want to add a compressor on this thing, and then I want to add Valhalla Supermassive, which you wouldn't want to do. But okay, why not? You can go into settings, and you can save channel strip setting as, and then you can save that as a preset. And then you could be piano Supermassive, and you could save that thing. And I'm not going to save it. But if you save it, it will then show up at the bottom down here. And then you can use it forever. And it's cool. I don't do it a ton, but the ones that I have saved, I do use those a ton. In fact, let me demonstrate. This thing right here, UT video, yeah, that's a preset that I made, just to make it super easy for me to pull that up. All right, number 14, moving on, is actually a plugin. And this isn't one that they had back when I was starting. So just FYI, this is, I set, the name of this video is things I wish I would have known when I got started, but I'm just kind of saying, had I started a year ago, I would have wished this, but I started back when they had Logic Pro 9, not Pro X. And that is EQ plugin. Everyone's used to seeing this channel EQ strip, right? The one that we've all come to see and love and, whatever.
And you see these in all the videos. But what about the fact that if you go down here, you have the vintage EQ selection or collection. This vintage tube EQ is super good. Seriously, just use it. It's got, I use it primarily for like boosting frequencies, not removing them, but the attenuation, you can remove frequencies, you can boost them, you can obviously change the bandwidth, you can change the frequency. Drive, I like the drive feature, adds a lot of brightness. But this thing sounds great. I'm just gonna kind of play around with it so you can hear what this sounds like on the piano. Okay, so that was just me kind of going through some different sounds and stuff. I could really hear it, especially on the high part. You can hear like the pad, because this is a prepared piano. It has cotton, so you can hear the hammers hitting the cotton. That pop, 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 pop. You could hear that a little bit better as I started cranking up the highs a little bit more, which is really cool sound. We are not in the mixing stage, and nor am I mixing this. I don't mix for my clients anymore. I got a guy on my team for that now. So anyway, that's a really cool plugin to use. So if you haven't used it, try out the tube EQ. All right, number 15, and that is a super dope feature called Strip Silence. If you've not used this, well, I actually just learned this year. So I've been using Logic for like 12 years and apparently only just now learned it, but okay. And that is Strip Silence. You can go in here, select some audio, do Control X, and check that out. Ready for this? Watch, as you lower, whoa, whoa, whoa. Change the threshold, and that'll change the sensitivity. And there we go. So I'll do like that and then do okay. And oh, it just did it on this one right here. It just got rid of all the silence in there. Same thing right here. Just like, okay. Got rid of all that silence in there. It's a super feature. Super good feature, super fast. Makes it a lot easier to do. And then of course you go in there and add all those fades. Okay, we are close to the end. Stick with me. The next one is to use flex pitch to change the gain. So here's a vocal. Typically you're gonna wanna use this on vocals. Let's say, for example, you've got a singer that's saying one word really loud and the very next one very softly. You can go in here to the bottom left and adjust the gain. This is so much better than doing automation, guys. Like, you seriously, use this. Use this. Still automate. Like, I'm not saying don't automate stuff, but this is super, super handy. The artist that I'm producing here, this is just a scratch vocal, but he's super consistent. You can see all this stuff. He's just got a very, very consistent volume when he sings. I don't even know how he does it. He's just got a killer voice. Anyway, Ariel, if you're watching this song, you're the man. Or watching this video, you're the man. So you can adjust the gain, and that is really, really handy. So I had a song I did with a female singer, and she just, like, some words were just like so like in your face, and then she kind of bring it down. It was like really difficult to work with. So that's where, you know, using this, it just saved me so much time, way, way faster than automating with volume. And finally, number 17, this is not something that was even available back when I got Logic, but for those of you guys who are newer, if you're not using this, come on. I'm gonna open up a new MIDI instrument, go to Alchemy. Okay, if you're doing any sort of like mainstream production or electronic anything, you're using synths, before you ever go buy a synth, seriously, use Alchemy. I'm not saying don't go buy synths, like especially if you're using like Monarch or Massive or any of that stuff. Those things I love those. They're good and I still use them. But Alchemy is incredible. If you're working on a serious budget and you want some really good sounding synths, Alchemy is like the hidden beast in Logic. And I think a lot of people, when they added Alchemy, I think a lot of people just were like super impressed, but then there are some people that still they aren't using it. Like, why not? Like, this thing sounds incredible. There are a ton of presets that you can use in here. Here's one, strings. I use a spectral pizzicato like all the time. You go in here and add all these macro controls. Yeah, and you have all these different controls, of course, you know, reverb, distortion, you can go into your effects, they have an arpeggiator in there, you can go to your advanced mode. I mean, this thing is very deep. So do not just like say, oh, well, it's a Logic thing. It's not that good. Logic has some fantastic sounds, some fantastic instruments. And look, I've spent a lot of money on sample libraries and stuff, but Alchemy, I still use Alchemy on a lot of my productions. So don't act like it's not a good thing. It's amazing. If you haven't been using Alchemy, use Alchemy. It is the hidden beast within Logic. And that, my friends, is number 17.
If you haven't already done so and you like this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. I'm increasing my upload schedule, getting really serious about growing this YouTube channel. I'm gonna be coming at you with a lot more video content. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.